Participants one. Why is it not in the main screen? Oh, there we go. Good morning. And good morning, everybody. That's interesting. It's been a little while, as you can tell, and it looks like things have moved around a little bit since the last time I've done a stream. It's been several weeks, as things have been really extremely busy on my end. Yeah, good morning, everybody. Anything been happening over the past few weeks or a month? Has been any news? I don't know. It feels like it's been a quiet summer with very little news. I mean, my plants died. Is that news? And by the way, to everybody, good morning, and I hope you have your coffee with you. I hope you can all come on in and let's gather around a little bit of a positive space. I think that's what's needed right now. And I'm trying to squeeze this in. I didn't get home until 3:30 in the morning yesterday, and my alarm went off at 7. And I've been trying to get through things and do the grind and squeeze in this quick little stream before I head to my meeting this morning. I hope you are all loving the weather. I am on a sandals mission today. You know what a sandals mission is? A sandals mission is what you do when the weather is so beautiful. It's a way of appreciating and reminding ourselves how nice the weather is versus in the winter. And the sandals mission is to try to go through an entire day just wearing sandals. So that's my number one goal of the day. Besides all my work stuff, like that's all the noise. But I always look for something a little bit fun to try to do on days just to, lighten the load a little bit. So today is a sandals day. So yeah, I don't know what's happened over the past few weeks. Good morning, Beth. It's good to see you. And thank you for those of you who are following on Locals, you can share your memes and graphics and all that stuff on there. And Beth always does send some positive stuff. I really appreciate that. I've been trying for a while to get back into the groove, but there's been, a lot of big things going on, things that I think you're going to hear more about towards the end of 2025 or, maybe at the end of the summer. A lot of big projects that I and some other people have been working on. And sandals or barefoot, Beth says. I don't know if I can go full barefoot, walking around the city, going to meetings and running errands. But, so if you can get sandals, if you can do barefoot, kudos to you. Maybe that would work if you lived in a beach town in Florida or something. Please like, share, and subscribe. And let's try to talk, about, just some things, but put the positive framing on stuff. Please like, share, and subscribe. So just to do some follow-up, because I've had a lot of messages from people. Yes, I've been in a few Twitter spaces as I've been traveling and on the road when I've had some chance just to weigh in on some of the noise that's going on in the world. And, sometimes you got to pay attention to the noise, and sometimes you just have to turn it off, which is what I'm probably going to do most of the day, just because I have so much work I have to do and a conference I was invited to report on, but unfortunately I don't think I'm going to make it, but we'll see what happens. I did speak in Tampa in Florida. I think I mentioned that the last time I streamed, and that was at an event called Bitcoin Day. And it's interesting to mention that now, given that yesterday was really wild for those of us who understand Bitcoin and have been into that. I know a lot of people here don't, but I'm going to mention this because eventually everyone will, I think. It was just wild to see Bitcoin within a 24-hour period went from, I think, the low of $110,000, which is crazy, to $118,000 US dollars in less than 24 hours. Now, those are the types of things that we would always joke about in Bitcoin. Like, can you imagine if there's a $10,000 swing in a day? When Bitcoin was $3,000 or $4,000, we would joke about that. Well, here we are. Here we are in the future, and that's exactly what's happened. And Bitcoin has managed to make Many people very, very wealthy, and it's changed their lives, which is why I often, try to discuss it when it's relevant to the news. And because we all need something to aspire to, something for hope in the future. And I think technology broadly is something to be optimistic about, but particularly if technology is, for a lot of people, I get it, they're not comfortable with it. Well, when technology merges with finance and can give you a better life in the future, then maybe that's something we should discuss a little bit more. And I try to get it on people's radars as much as possible. On top of the role that Bitcoin had in this moment, the trucker convoy, there are 2 chapters on Bitcoin available at honkingforfreedom.com. If the book made you cry, please leave a review. And the chapters are 29. This was Bitcoin's moment, and chapter 30, Bitcoin proves its power. And it's a kind of light reading intro into the Bitcoin world and Bitcoin ecosystem. So I do recommend it. I've been working a little bit on my Substack. I released a few articles over the time, just leading to when I was away and while I was away. I think the last one I did was the one on the VPNs. The title is the China-Pakistan VPN pipeline from your device to their propaganda machine. And I think there's maybe not so much a direct, but an indirect correlation and coordination between the VPN organizations, the VPN companies that are supposed to be protecting your data, but most of it seems to be going through China, Pakistan, and other adversarial countries. And I think that data is being mined and coming back in the form of propaganda to target you specifically on social media. And that might be why we are seeing so much ridiculous brainwashing going on in alternative media. And I'm sure you've all seen that. We've all seen some of the craziness and the crazy takes going on in the world. And I think that's that pipeline of the VPN companies that are monitoring all your data that no one wants talked about. It's really funny. It's always the obsession over some country in the Middle East the size of El Salvador that seems to be just trying to survive. But, when the Pakistani ISI, the intelligence agency, nobody knows anything about, nor do they care because they're not primed to know how dangerous it is. When they're capturing your data, nobody says anything. It's just the world's become 24/7 conspiracy hour. It's like Art Bell or George Norrie. Like, that was entertainment, but that's become like mainstream alternative news. It's absolutely crazy. Anyways, check out that article on my Substack, bjdichter.substack.com. I think it's also in a few other publications. You may check, I think the Daily Bell has been picking up a lot of my stuff, maybe some others, I'm not sure. And also, there's a recent article from Michael Kimmelman penned called 36 Hours That Changed the World that I think you're going to enjoy. And I don't want to spoil it, so no spoilers, but check it out. You'll enjoy it. But anyways, so that particular article on the VPN pipeline is very serious. And I wish people would pay attention to that instead of going over the flashy, lures that gets all people's attention. And but what are you going to do? What else has happened since I've last been on here? Oh, apparently we had a war and it ended in the Middle East, that's a really interesting way to frame what it is. But that's not something positive, so I don't really want to talk about that today. We'll get into that stuff a little bit more in the future. Something is that has happened that is negative that I do want to talk about, because it's about this power of reframing that I've discussed here. I've done an article in it, my Substack, something I learned a long time ago. And this idea of how we reframe to the positive, which is a skill, by the way. It's not something that is easy. It's something that takes a lot of time, and in my case, many, many years to learn how to do it effectively. But it's part of the reason that I'm usually in the positive frame, even despite some of the chaos and noise around us. And it's a skill. Maybe we'll talk more about this moving on. I know we've discussed it in the Discord and in some of our private chats, but I think this is important. So, in this particular example, those of you who know the name Scott Adams, he's the creator of Dilbert, and Scott was just on. He was actually just on with Jordan Peterson yesterday. I think they released the episode, but he does a stream, and he's one of the people that I've communicated with over the last couple of years since the trucker convoy. Him and various other people. Well, Scott let it know. You probably, those of you on Twitter, would have seen it already. But he, and it also made it into legacy media. He announced when Joe Biden was being attacked and ridiculed for his cancer, which was really cruel, irrespective of how much we may or may not like somebody. The lack of compassion was stunning. I'm not saying you have compassion for Joe Biden individually, but as a human being, you have compassion, right? And anyways, he's got announced at that point he has the same cancer, although in his case it's terminal. And he has gone into detail with that in one of his episodes. But that's the negative side of that. So, how do we reframe? And this is why I tell people when people complain how difficult life is and all the problems in our lives, like, yeah, we all have problems. We all have nonsense and noise and trauma and travesty we have to deal with in our lives. That's just part of the human experience. But it was very interesting to see his reframe of his situation. And it was just, it's stunning to see that there are people who get this, who understand it, and so many of us could benefit from this, and we don't. And what he explained, this was recently, actually, within, I think, the past week or so, was he had chosen a date that he was going to end things because he was in so much excruciating pain. Well, lo and behold, there was some new treatment that got on his radar, and that new treatment was a drug that, I don't know, it was going to suppress it or whatever. Anyways, one of the byproducts of it removed his pain. So he went from living, and he explained this with Jordan Peterson, and he explained it before, he went from 5 or 6 months of excruciating pain to, oh, hey, now I don't have any pain anymore. And here's the reframe. We look at terminal illness as we're losing something, we're going to be losing our lives. That's obvious. He reframed it as, I chose a date, I found this new treatment, it's removed my pain, and now I can, somewhat go back to living my life somewhat normal, and maybe I'm going to get another year or two that I didn't have before. So, as he put it, I'm now living on borrowed time. So he's gone from framing, as we would normally do, that our life is about to end and we're losing everything. He's reframed to, I'm gaining a couple of extra years of my life. And that is a powerful and important psychological perspective to layer over your life. This is what was going on, by the way, in Ottawa with many of the people that I was speaking to who were freaking out. There's a few people in particular I'm thinking of that were freaking out, full of anxiety. The sky is falling, the world is ending. And I had to help them reframe to, listen, look, the sun is shining. Yeah, it's cold outside. The world's not going to collapse. We're not in a country like Iran. We're in Canada. no, the government has problems, yes, but guess what? They're Canadians like the rest of us. We'll figure this out. We'll figure out a way to come together, and the sun will rise tomorrow. And if that's the framing that you're in, that you're always looking at, well, what are the positive aspects of my current circumstances? Then you know what? It becomes very easy to work through the challenges in our lives because we're stuck in a place of anxiety, right? You cannot, for me, you cannot engage in problem solving in our lives if we're trapped in anxiety. And this is why reframing is so important. And this is why, for me, in my case, in my life, I've been able to get through some difficult times without losing losing my mind, and being able to work through it because, okay, I could step back and reframe to the positive. I've had people say to me, well, how can you do it? It's so easy for you. I'm like, no, it's a skill. It's a skill that you develop. And this example with Scott Adams, where he has taken his terminal illness and reframed from my life is going to be ending to I'm now living on borrowed time. I've now got like bonus time in my life. That is a perfect example that I think we all should follow. I think that would make the world a lot better if we were living in this positive frame as opposed to this nihilistic, negative, miserable BS that I was seeing all yesterday, with all this, blaming one group for all the world's problems. All the world's problems is somebody else. It's some shadowy figure and whatever. Like, no, we all have problems. Life is difficult for everybody sometimes. As a friend of mine who taught me many years ago, who's had a very difficult life but has made something of it, as he said to me, we all get a deck of cards, and some of us get a really crappy deck, like my friend did. But you play it the best you can, and you try to learn as many skills as you need. That's going to improve your life. And if you do that, and you understand that these challenges in our lives, that's just what makes life interesting. You got to work through them. Guess what? The noise isn't going to bother you so much. Jesse, good morning, y'all, as well. It's good to see you, dear. Say hello to Rocky. Yeah, and Beth just says it here. It takes time and effort to look for the positive. Yeah, it takes time. That's why I've discussed in the past, that reframing exercise, reframing to gratitude, the 5-minute journal in the mornings, where you start asking yourself, start every day if you need to, by asking yourself, what are 3 things I'm grateful for? It just shift your mind. And the idea is not to blurt out a list as quickly as possible. The idea is to get yourself into a mental picture where you're getting away from all this negative, miserable BS, and you're moving yourself into, okay, what's really good in my life? Because we all have amazing good things. A perfect example, I messaged Joe, a guy on Twitter, Joe Colasari, about this in Bitcoin. We see this in the Bitcoin world, where people are, he calls them the doomers. That, the doomers, the world's going to end, and the shadowy figures and this and that, and all these problems. And it was really wild to see that sort of perspective when, hey, Bitcoin people, you have Bitcoin. What are you complaining about? Before you didn't have it. Okay, maybe you can complain now, but now you have a solution that you very much believe in. So what are you complaining about? Well, you want, like, it's like people nowadays can't take yes for an answer. We see that in politics as well, amongst the Trump administration, with all the friction amongst his base and people trying to tear it apart. It's just like, hey, remember a few months ago when the world was going to end unless he got elected? He got elected. There you go. Nothing's going to be perfect. There's going to be bumps in the road. Like, everybody's just programmed to bitch and whine about everything. Like, stop. Really get some perspective of how good your life is. And, it always amazed me, people in the West, certain people, obviously we see these sort of people as well. that constantly complain how evil the West is, how bad Western governments are, how it's all collapsing. They're the ones destroying the world, blah, 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 whatever. And I just think, have you never traveled? Have you ever traveled to see how difficult places things are in other places around the world? Gone to the third world? Like I was explaining to somebody the other day, I don't think I have one friend in Colombia who hasn't had a sibling, a parent, an aunt, uncle, family relative who was assassinated by the narcos. Not one. All of them have somebody who was assassinated by them. Think of that. Think of that, what that does to you. So we're here bitching and complaining about, I don't know what, whatever conspiracy it is. Oh, these people are controlling everything. Whereas people around the world that don't have time for this nonsense, because their family members have been assassinated, or they lived in a paramilitary controlled area or a narco controlled area, whatever. And we're sitting here bitching and complaining. Like, we got to stop, really. We got to get some perspective and don't allow the reptiles in alternative and legacy media that are there to prime you to be the negative. They're trying to get you to do the opposite. While I'm trying to, and I and others try to show the importance of reframing to the positive, there are those people that try to brainwash you to reframe to the negative, always. And that is not good for your emotional psyche, in my opinion. You know, I think life is a lot better when we focus on what we have and how good life is and how good our lives have been, irrespective of struggles that we've had, and many of us do have, right? And you see the tactic of brainwashing people. It has been massively accelerated, and that's part of the reason I addressed earlier that article in my Substack on the VPN networks in China and Pakistan that are grabbing your data, and it seems to be coming back in the form of brainwashing propaganda online targeting your IP. It seems to be that's what's going on. And I thought to myself, you know, I don't know if this is what's changed in social media over the past couple of years, but like who do you think is more? If we like, I don't like collectivizing people because that's the leftist tactic, but you know, people ascribe to these identities, and you know, they'll identify as liberal, they'll identify as conservative or whatever. Okay, fine. Let's take that frame. Who do you think is easier to brainwash? Of which of those two, you know, political identity groups, who's easier to brainwash? You know, I posted something earlier, was it earlier today or yesterday? And I said, this is related to a speech last night. And my question or statement was, or assertion, however you want to put it, was, it's interesting to watch the shape-shifting conservatives morph into ethno-communist leftists. Because they're leftists. I'm sorry. I mean, I see this thing with Tucker Carlson and TPUSA blaming the group or whatever. It's always a shadowy group. It's never a name. There's never specificity. It's just, you know, downloading the struggles of the world onto one scapegoat or one group. That's a leftist. That's somebody who puts people into different groups, and they'll ascribe certain traits to one particular group or different particular groups. And sometimes it can be on their ethnic identity, it could be on their religion, could be on their economic status, whatever it is. But people who do that and say all X group or these group are whatever, that's a leftist. So you're looking at radical leftists LARPing as conservatives. And somebody told me a long time ago that the conservative movement, this guy's a very, very hardcore conservative. He said he believed that there is a broad strategy for leftists to take over and destroy conservative movements around the Western world. Well, I guess that seems to be what's happening. You see all these conservatives that have an underlying philosophical framing of the world that is radical leftist and collectivist. Well, what's going on there? I mean, maybe he's right. And I saw this in politics. You see why I'm not a fan of politics? Like, I saw this inside the conservatives as well, that the philosophical framing of these people is very, very centralized and collectivist in nature. And that's why I ask, who's more easy to brainwash? Those who identify on one side, the more liberal side, or those who identify on the conservative side? Or are they both equally brainwashable for another reason? I'll give you a hint. The first indicator is somebody who leads with identity, right? I'm an X type of, forget the racial stuff, but I am X. I am part of this group, right? I am big C, big L, small l. That's an identity in today's world, because we've shifted from religious and racial identities to now politics and its political identity. And that seems to be coming from the adversaries of the West, who know this would be a brilliant scam to cause massive division in the Western world and to get people at each other's throats who would normally be aligned with people, which is with each other, which is what Tucker Carlson has done. There's an article I drafted that's in Zero Hedge. It's the one from Tenet. It's from Tucker Carlson to Tenet Media, how conservatives lost their counterculture status. You should check it out, because that is a good one step in a bunch of breadcrumbs that have been laid out that shows why all of this chaos is happening and why you shouldn't take the bait. And I think the good thing is, look at it this way. Like, I'm traveling, as I mentioned, I was in Florida, in Tampa. Great city, by the way. Never been there before. And super chill. Highly recommend it. Really nice people. Very pretty. But I've been obviously all over the U.S. and back and forth, all the different subcultures in the U.S., in the Northeast, South, etc., as well as, back and forth to Latin America. All this chaos that you see in social media that's trying to make people nuts, that's all centered around politics. Do you notice you don't see it day to day? Like, do you see it amongst your neighbors and your friends, or when you go to the gym, or you go to hang out with people? You notice you don't see that chaos. You only see it in the social media echo chambers. That's a reason. There's a reason for that, because that is not real. Somebody I saw recently who was trying to fuel some of this extremism amongst people. And it's somebody I've been thinking for quite a while. I think that guy is an intelligence op. And I say that from the perspective of somebody who's lived in a Latin American country where there's lots of intel ops, just for security reasons. And I saw him, I'm like, he has all the patterns and indicators of somebody who behaves that way. So that's not conclusive. But then I saw him going off on some of the most extreme rhetoric that is not his. I didn't think those are his views. Well, that's what's being done to all of us, to try to make everybody crazy. But the good thing is, it doesn't seem to be taking hold in society broadly in our daily lives. That's why, remember the protests in Los Angeles we saw all about, right? Remember those? The city was basically burning, and then boom, it shut off, turned off. Like somebody turned off a switch, right? It turned off right around the time where Iran was attacked. The nuclear facility was attacked by the Trump administration, by the United States. And then they followed up with some threats of bringing the military in, and they did. They brought, I think it was the Marines, if I'm not mistaken. And then all of a sudden, it just went away, because none of that is organic. None of it. It is all foreign funded to brainwash some people, a small group, subsect of people, to brainwash them, to get them out on the street, because they got nothing going for them. but that is such a minute percentage uh, of people that they're not people we know in our daily lives. They're maniacs, right? If they're not out on the street and screaming kill whoever, they're gonna be in a what's it called, a mental facility in a straitjacket. It's the same people. So the good news is, I think, is people day to day are just pretty chill and normal, and people are just trying to better their lives, take care of their families and whatever. So you see the noise on social media. I think at some point people will broadly understand how much of it is fake. And you start to see that now. People are trying to identify accounts that, oh, that's a bot account, that's a burner account, that's using API script to just attack and harass people, coming from, like I said, Pakistan. And so people are, which is a big problem, by the way. And so people are understanding that. So I think in a few years from now, people will just be able to dismiss all the noise as just garbage, and we're going to be better off for it. And I think in the interim, the key is just not to take the bait and not to buy into these BS narratives about the simplistic scapegoating of the world of all sorts of people, and buying into that nonsense and then regurgitating it, versus just understanding that this is not reality, and let it work its way through over the next several years as people become more familiar with the strategy. So I don't know. I think that's a cause for positivity, that the nonsense and the noise isn't working. And so just don't take the bait. Something I said frequently during the trucker convoy, as frequently people were trying to be baited into doing stuff they shouldn't have done, because we were all very peaceful and tried to be as courteous as we could to people in the city, in the local community, all that sort of stuff. It's the same thing here. Just try to be cool with people. Try to be courteous, and just don't buy into these simplified, one-dimensional worldviews that obviously are fake and are nonsense, but are there just to cause you anxiety and to cause you to become hostile to other people in your community, in your country. Like, we're all going to be different. It's fine. Great. But just don't take the bait, And it's frustrating to see that toxic cancer make its way into, some very prominent platforms that were influential in the past. Now people understand, what's really going on. But, what they say, follow the money. You follow the money, then you understand with some of these people what the motivations are, because a lot of it just comes down to that. Not always, of course, ideology for some other people, but in the West broadly, it's financial gain. Financial gain for fiat crap as opposed to Bitcoin. By the way, Bitcoin all-time high. I think I just checked before I started the stream. We were still at 117,600 or something. So basically 118,000. So we're in this era of Bitcoin all-time highs. And we're at a place where if you're a Bitcoiner and you're a doomer, wake up, man. Like, remember when we were like, wow, it'd be crazy if Bitcoin achieved an exchange rate to fiat of 10,000 US dollars. Well, now it's over 10x that. So I think there's a lot to celebrate in the world. I look outside right now. It's a beautiful day. It's a sandals day, and maybe that's a good initiative for the rest of you. Make little small goals that will make you happy. Today, I'm just going to wear sandals. Anyways, I got to cut a little bit short because I do have a meeting, but Tao, it's good to see you as well, brother. It says, I've come to the conclusion that politics is just people arguing over bad takes and disinformed analysis of issues. Yes, yes. And the other thing is, I don't know if this is controversial to say, there's I call it the meme issue that everybody's trying to push online to try to get rid of Pam Bondi or whatever for whatever reason. There is so much dark stuff that goes on in the world, and there are people who try to take care of those things, and some of those things you'll never ever see. Like what really goes on in the world, it would blow people's minds of how the world really works. And sometimes it's, I don't know, like I'm conflicted because I'm an open source guy. I believe in transparency, but at the same time, there's certain things that they just got to be dealt with in the back room. Let the people who are most affected by it work it out. And that's not all things, but don't let that noise infect your life. Like, why do you want to deal with that sort of anxiety in your life? I don't know. I'm not sure. Like, I'm of two minds of it, but I just know of some really, really dark stuff that you would never, like, if I told you, you wouldn't even believe it. And you'd be so horribly mortified by it. And so they'll throw these lures out there to make us all crazy and reel us in and get us at each other's throats. Just, go on with your life. There's so many good things in the world. Doesn't mean you ignore stuff, but at the same time, doesn't mean you emotionally engage in every little thing that can make us all crazy. Send you some love as well, Jesse, and to Tao and Beth and everybody else, people watching now and watching in the future. Life is good. I think we are living in, I spend so much time with AI, and it's amazing. All these things that are coming that are going to build the future of abundance. I really do think that's where we're going to go into, the abundance future, the golden age, whatever. There's so many good things. That's why it's odd that people see, and I know it's a natural instinct for a lot of people. New technology, they immediately get scared. Okay, I guess I'm not like that. There's going to be trade-offs for everything. There's always going to be negatives and positives. But I think overall, we're heading towards a future that sci-fi couldn't even conceptualize how amazing the future is going to be. We just got to get through the bumps in the road and not take the bait. All right, I'm going to run. I don't want to be too late, and I want you all to have an amazing day. And sorry, I've been away for a bit. I've been trying to do streams, but it's just I've no life. But we'll get this systematized. So we'll be doing this a little bit more frequently. No guarantee next Saturday, but I'm already penciling in my schedule that we'll be doing this again sometime soon, next weekend. And send me your love and comments, and I send it all to you as well. And we'll talk to you sometime soon.